No one knows how tired you are from pretending you're okay. You still go to work every day, still show up on time, still nod quietly when someone asks, "You good?" You still say a few polite words, still smile at the party, still shake hands respectfully, still keep your composure like a man is supposed to. But no one knows. Something inside you has changed. Not loud, not explosiva. It just left you little by little, silently, like how a wave retreats in the night without anyone noticing. You used to be a man of effort, used to love deeply, used to give your heart to someone, hoping to be seen, to be understood, to be held onto. You used to choose to stay, even when your heart began to tire. Used to hold back just so the other person wouldn't feel sad. Used to ignore the voice inside, just to keep the peace. But then one day, you suddenly realize you've become invisible in your own life. You still work, still show up, still play your role, but no longer feel like you truly matter to anyone. In the previous video, I told you why many men over 50 choose to live alone and still feel fine. Not because they don't need anyone, but because after the quiet cracks of love, they realized silence doesn't make them empty. It's the half-hearted relationships that made them feel lonelier. And in this video, I want to go even deeper. Not to talk about the joy of being single, but about the fragments you've never shared with anyone. Not because you're hiding, not because you're suppressing, but because saying it out loud wouldn't change anything. There are things you hold on to, not because they're light, but because you no longer have the strength to explain them. If you've ever chosen silence, ever pulled away, it's not because you're weak, but because it was the only way to protect the last intact part of yourself. Then leave a quiet line. Silence was my armor. Because sometimes, staying silent isn't avoiding. It's how you survive in a world that no longer has room for tired hearts. You didn't change overnight. You changed over years with countless small cuts no one ever saw. You once loved wholeheartedly. You were once patient, forgiving, and carried the weight. But then one day, you saw it clearly. If you kept going, the only one getting hurt would be yourself. So you stepped back. No one noticed. No one asked why. But you knew the reason. 1. You got tired of explaining. You tried many times. Spoke honestly. Explained why you needed quiet, why you pulled back, why you seemed quieter than before. But they didn't listen to understand. They listened to argue, to react, to label you as too sensitive, distant, hard to understand. You didn't run out of things to say. You just felt like no one was worth explaining to anymore. 2. You stopped believing in promises. You once heard them say, "You're the one I need. I'll never be like the others. We're in this together, forever." But when things got tough, they disappeared. Quietly, completely. Since then, every promise has just been sound. You no longer believe in words. You believe in actions, in consistency, in the ones who stay through the worst days. 3. You stayed too long in a place where you were no longer welcomed. You tried, many times. Sent messages, made dinner, started conversations, hoped someone would notice you were still there, still trying. But all you got back was distance, silence, lack of care. Eventually you understood. You were in a place where love had died and only habit remained. And that habit wasn't worth the rest of your life. 4. You sacrificed too much to the point of losing yourself. You gave up personal opportunities, turned down friends' invitations, set your passions aside just to keep the peace. You thought, if I keep compromising, they'll be grateful. But no, they only got used to you always giving in. And when you stopped sacrificing, they started blaming. Now you understand. Anyone who doesn't value your sacrifice doesn't deserve it. Woo. You learned that peace is more valuable than being right. There was a time you tried to argue so others would understand how you felt. But the more you spoke, the smaller you felt. The more you explained, the weaker you seemed. You realized some arguments don't end with a winner, just someone exhausted. So you chose silence. Not because you were scared, but because you knew your peace was no longer worth trading. Luke, you used to be the healer, but no one healed you. You used to be a safe place for the wounded. They came to you in tears. You listened, comforted, waited patiently as they healed, and when they were strong enough to move on, they left. No thank you, no looking back. You realized you weren't the one they loved. You were just a stop to recover before heading to someone else. Now, you no longer play the healer. You're learning to heal yourself first. You understood. Not everyone deserves your heart. You once opened up easily. Once believed anyone can change. Everyone deserves a chance. But then you understood. Not everyone values a kind soul. Some only seek feelings, not commitment. Some enjoy your presence but don't want to build with you. So now, you guard the softest part of yourself. Not frozen, but no longer easy to reach. You didn't pull away because you're weak. You pulled away because you tried too hard, loved too deeply, and got hurt too much. Now, you're starting to live differently. Not to be defensive, but to protect what's left within you. And in the next part, I'll talk about the choices you're now making. Not from pain, but from clarity. At some point in life, you stop asking, does anyone truly love me? And start asking, am I living true to myself? You didn't withdraw because you were defeated. You withdrew because you finally saw the truth behind all the noise. You stopped searching for someone to make you happy and started creating a space where you feel at peace. These are 6 things you consciously chose, not because you were hurt, but because you've become more clear-minded. You choose simplicity instead of drama. In the past, you endured complicated relationships, half-hearted conversations, roller coaster emotions, fights just to test if love is still there. Now, if someone doesn't know what they want, you walk away. You don't have time for emotional games. You're no longer drawn to hot today, cold tomorrow. You need stability, simplicity, and sincerity. Simplicity isn't boring. It's the only thing that feels worth keeping in your life right now. 9. You know who you are and no longer need anyone to confirm it. You once tried to be cuter, smarter, more attractive, just so someone would stay. Now, no more. You understand yourself. You know what makes you happy, what makes you uneasy, what you're willing to compromise and what you won't. You don't need someone to validate your worth anymore. You're not seeking recognition, not trying to prove you're enough in anyone's eyes. Because now, you are enough for yourself. Sure, you see, being alone isn't bad. In fact, it's a gift. You once feared coming home to no one, feared the empty dinner table, feared the long nights without voices. But then, you began to see, silence doesn't make you empty. It creates space to hear yourself. No one angry, no one snapping, no one making you exhausted from having to be on time, say the right thing, be in the right mood. Just you, and a space where you feel safe. Being alone isn't loneliness. Being alone is sometimes where your soul gets to rest. 11. You find meaning in small things. There was a time you thought life had to be grand, dramatic, explosive to be worth living. But now, you find joy in the strangest little things. A morning coffee with no one rushing you. An afternoon cleaning your space your own way. An old song playing right when you needed it. You've started seeing beauty in simplicity. No need for many people. No need for many things. Just enough and you feel at peace. 12. You understand, freedom doesn't mean loneliness. You once thought having no one beside you meant you were lacking. But then you realized what you lacked wasn't someone else. It was space to simply be yourself. Now, you're no longer envious of people in love. You don't feel insecure for not having a partner, because you understand freedom is being able to choose. To say no without explaining. To stay silent without feeling guilty. To live in the way that feels right to you. And you know what? Very few people dare to live that way. 13. You love silence because it heals more than any conversation. You once thought speaking up was the way to release. You searched for understanding people to share with. But in the end, you saw clearly, no one can truly understand all of you. And they don't need to. You started choosing silence, not because you have nothing to say, but because you don't need to say everything. Silence helps you recover. It doesn't judge, doesn't impose, doesn't react. It simply is. And that's exactly what you've always needed. You don't choose peace because you gave up. You choose it because you've lived long enough in chaos to know It's not for you. Now, every day you live is a day you choose, not to please anyone, but so you no longer betray yourself. And in the next part, I'll tell you about the things you're slowly doing again, not for anyone, but for you. No more obligations, no more pretending, just you and the real life finally beginning. After all that you've been through, you no longer live to prove anything to anyone. No more explaining, no more holding on, no more forcing yourself to fit into places that aren't meant for you. You're not running from love, but you no longer compromise for something called love that makes you lose yourself. This part is no longer reaction. It is selection, choosing what's right, choosing what's still intact in you. 14. You don't reject love, but you reject the trade-off. You once loved, genuinely, wholeheartedly, without calculation. You once gave so much that even you had nothing left. You once believed that love meant sacrifice, meant enduring, meant doing something to keep it. But then, you learned a painful lesson. Real love doesn't make you pay with your own self. So now, you don't close your heart. But you won't love in ways that cost you yourself. You don't need a love that makes you struggle to survive. You need a love where you can be yourself and still be accepted, respected, and at peace. Shiwu, you're not afraid of attachment. You're afraid of losing yourself. They say you're afraid of commitment. They say you're cold, distant, but they don't know. You once committed to the point of losing your own inner voice. You once pleased, once compromised, once stepped back, because you were afraid to lose the one you loved. Until one day, you realized, losing yourself is scarier than losing anyone. Now, you're not afraid of commitment. You just want to be sure. If someone comes into your life, they won't make you disappear again. 16. You're grown enough to not need someone to understand, just someone who doesn't hurt you. When you were younger, you craved someone who understood you, wanted someone to read what you didn't say, wanted them to see the soft parts of you without mocking them. But in the end, you understood. Understanding is a luxury. Respect is what keeps people together the longest. You don't need someone to read your heart. You just need someone who doesn't judge, doesn't twist your words, doesn't make you feel on guard every time you speak. Someone who doesn't need to decode you, just doesn't hurt you any further. 17. You once lost everything, and now you won't lose yourself again. Maybe you once lost a person, a family, an opportunity, a piece of youth. Maybe you once lost honor, trust, a sense of direction in life. You once fell, stood up, and fell again. But through every fall, you learned the most important lesson. Lose anything, just don't lose yourself. Now you live slower, steadier, more carefully, not because you're afraid of love, but because you know your worth is no longer something to be traded ever again. 18. You don't regret loving, but you're proud for choosing peace. You once loved and there's nothing to be ashamed of, once sacrificed, once trusted, even though that very trust once hurt you to the core. But you didn't let the pain turn you bitter. You didn't use your wounds to wound others. You just understood. Understood that love isn't always enough to keep two people close. Understood that some endings are necessary, so you can begin again with yourself. You don't miss the one who left. You just miss the time you abandoned yourself, just to hold on to something that wasn't genuine. And what allows you to walk forward with your head held high is that for the first time in your life, you were brave enough to choose peace, not because someone gave it to you, but because you knew you deserve it. Now you don't live to be praised. Don't live for someone to see you as worth keeping. You live not to betray yourself. You choose simplicity because you once lived too complicated. You choose silence because you were once hurt for speaking up. You choose being alone because you understand. Being alone the right way is better than being with someone the wrong way. There are men who no longer speak of love, not because they don't believe in it, but because they once paid with their entire soul. They once waited, once forgave, once hoped, but in the end, what they were left with was a kind of exhaustion no one could see, an emptiness behind a perfectly timed smile, a sigh behind every door closed at night. And now they don't need saving. Don't expect to be fully understood. They just want peace. Peace to be themselves. Peace to live without defense. Peace to get through each day without needing permission to exist. If this video reached you, there's no need to say much. Just leave one line. I'm not bitter. I just rebuilt. And if you know another man, also living in silence like you once did, send him this video. Not to change him, just so he knows. He's not alone, and sometimes silence is the most noble thing a man can hold on to.